Welcome to Beyond the Beat, your go-to source for insider knowledge on fantasy football. Hosted by Zach Hyduke and Matt Olson. We bring you straight to the action with exclusive interviews from NFL beat writers, draft experts, and film gurus. Get the news from the field, straight from the sources at training camp and beyond. This is where fantasy wins are made.
Welcome in, everybody, to Beyond the Beat with 32 beat writers. My name is Zach Hyduke, and today I am here with my good buddy, Matt Olson. Finally, it's good to have you back, Matt. How are you doing today, man?
I'm well. It's I can't believe we're heading into week 10. I feel like the season just started.
I know. It feels like that every year, though. You know, we have that crazy busy off season and the lead up, and then we, before that even, we've got that dead period, and now, we've been yearning for football for so long, and now it feels like it's halfway over.
The season basically is, right? I actually got a chance to catch the Titans-Patriots game this last weekend, which I think I remember. I threw a tweet out there that said, this might be the worst game I've ever attended. It actually ended up being pretty entertaining. So I'm glad to eat crow on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're just such a negative Nancy. I mean, as basically a Patriots fan, yourself, I don't know. I was like, man, why is this guy clowning on the team that he claims that he's in support of here? But yeah, we're gonna, since we are halfway through, and I am a little bit jealous that you actually got to see Drake May live there. I didn't really ask you for any of your personal takeaways on that, so if we get into stuff and you have some, let us know. But what today we're gonna do is we're gonna go through some of our second half saviors. You did a little bit of work on this, and just see some guys that may be able to help you out in your fantasy leagues that previously maybe weren't usable, but have perhaps like a super good strength of schedule down the back end, or maybe just aren't super rostered, or perhaps you have some questions on whether or not you could start them. And we're just going to give you a little bit more confidence on those guys and see if we can get them into the starting lineup. I did want to say real quick, so I'm going to go on a mini soapbox here just for a second. And I know all of you who are listening are used to hearing this at the very end, but just something that was bugging me today, and it happened, right? Like, those people who think that they're being nice when you're on the road, but really they're trying to get you to do something dangerous by like waving you through an intersection or something. Like, why can't people just obey the rules of the road? And and we'll all do it together. And you take the turn when you're supposed to take the turn, and I'll take the turn when I'm supposed to take the turn, and nobody gets, killed. Like this afternoon, I was driving and I'm going to turn left, and opposing traffic, this lady was going to turn right. She was just a lady. It happens. I have no prejudice against anybody here. I've seen it happen from men and women alike here. Equal opportunity rant. But she went to like wave me through and was like flashing her lights. It's like, dude, if some impatient person comes around you because they see you're turning right and I become their hood ornament because you were trying to like do something nice for me, I don't need to get splatter killed today. So I don't know. That's just my personal rant. I don't think I've had that rant on the show before, but I just had to get that off my chest and tell somebody that. So even if only like 3 of you out there give a crap about that, that will make my day. So please just do. If it's your turn to turn right and you have the right of way, just do it. That's my thing. So anyways, do you agree with me anyways?
Yeah, no. I still have a very aggressive Bostonian way of driving in me now, even though now I live in the South, and you see it, you do see it all the time. I'm probably part of the problem there. So maybe I should, I'm self-reflecting now in the moment.
All right. Well, I guess if we ever do meet head on in the road, you just do what you do, and we'll see how it goes. A couple days ago, yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this, we were talking with Ross Jackson of the Saints, and we just wanted to put a quick note out there. You're going to see something on our website a little bit later today if you're listening to this on Thursday. And we will be putting out just a quick takeaway article there. If you're a subscriber, you can check that out. But I did just want to note one of the takeaways that we had from him that I really thought was interesting. So Ross Jackson covers the Saints, does a very good job for the Locked On Network and a couple of other places there. He's the local beat reporter for them. And, I asked him a lot of questions, but with the coaching change and the Derek Carr situation of him not being super great, I was kind of like, maybe they'll move on from him. But one of the things that kind of became sort of clear through the conversation is that I think they might be looking to stick with him. So that's just, and maybe do like a restructure on that contract just due to their cap situations. And then maybe have kind of like a Cousins, Michael Penix type of deal like Atlanta has going on right now. Whereas I don't know why, but I was just kind of assuming they'd be kicking Carr out the door and go from there. But looks like that may not be the case. So make sure to keep a lookout for that after you listen to the episode. Go check that out at 32beatwriters.com if you get a chance. All right, Matt, let's go ahead and get into our second half saviors. All right, you helped put together a little bit of a list that you constructed here, of players that you feel like would be able to help people down the home stretch, help that push them into the playoffs. Who's the first guy that you thought of when we came up with this?
Maybe there's some recency bias here, but how can you not love what you saw from DeAndre Hopkins now that he's 2 weeks into his Chiefs tenure? Mahomes clearly needed a guy like this. I think that first catch we saw down the field, how it just I still think I'm trying to figure out how that happened. I think the obvious answer is that you have two very talented football players that have some form of early chemistry, because you don't make that throw and you don't make that catch unless there's some kind, I hate the word synergy, but some kind of synergy that they've already developed. I mean, we used to go back, earlier in Hopkins' career, and he got the QB proof label pretty early. He just produced whatever situation he was in, produced. We even saw him kind of allude to that in his most recent interview, just saying that he's just beyond happy to be in this situation and beyond happy to be here. And he kind of alluded to that, like, this is a completely new scenario for him. He's never had, this kind of scenario, which, I hate to use the word vintage, but vintage Deshaun Watson wasn't terrible. But it's definitely a welcomed scenario for Mahomes and probably the Chiefs team as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, in general, Worthy just, and we were both, I think, kind of skeptical on Worthy coming in. I know I certainly was. Not that he's a bad player, but just that he's not going to be the player that everybody taking him at the 104 in their dynasty rookie drafts is hoping him to be. And perhaps he turns into that in a couple years. But Rashee Rice was the guy. He gets injured. And now they bring in a guy to basically replace him, a guy who maybe isn't a burner, but he's got really good hands. And yeah, you mentioned that catch. That was just ridiculous. I thought for sure that was going to be a pick, just because of the nature of like the safety coming over and all of that. And he just yoink, right out of the air. That was really, really cool to see. And I apologize if you mentioned this. We got a message from our guy, Ross Jackson, as you were saying what you were saying, but DeAndre Hopkins has a really good strength of schedule. But I'm going to put this out here on Twitter in a couple of minutes when I get a chance. But it looks like there may have been like some issues with Kendre Miller and like the frustration with Dennis Allen, and that the second stint on IR maybe had some like personal like issues and stuff in there. I'm going to post this here when I get a chance, but if y'all are listening, make sure to go check out LouisianaSports.net or Ross Jackson. He probably posted that already on his X, and go read through that. That sounds spicy. I'm really interested in that. Man, that's going to be interesting. All right. Okay. Sorry. Did you have anything else on DeAndre Hopkins there?
No, I think your Worthy take is interesting. just because of where he was. And you're right, he's not the guy this year. He's not Tyreek Hill light. I think some of us also forget that, Tyreek had 600 yards and 6 touchdowns in his, rookie season. He did have 61 receptions. So, I don't think we're going to see that out of Worthy this year. But to your point, I don't think he should be slept on. I think it could be a little bit of growing pains. It could be a little bit of mismanagement in some scenarios, which we saw in the last game. But I did just want to touch base quickly on that.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, and we can't probably dive in too much because we have a lot to get to. But I didn't feel like maybe it was mismanagement. I don't know. Maybe you could share your opinion there. But with Worthy specifically, I just feel like right now part of the problem is that he's a guy you have to draw up, and Andy Reid is great at doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But if those plays don't work out, which is maybe what you were referring to, he's not going to be a guy who's going to do a lot on his own at the moment. So DeAndre Hopkins has to be that guy. He can be, in some ways, again, I think maybe what Rashee Rice was supposed to be at this point in the season for them, and was to begin the season before his injury, and what Travis Kelce kind of used to be. So yeah, with that great strength of schedule down the back half of the season, he has a top 5 strength of schedule for receivers. So that should be pretty advantageous. But who's your next guy?
So I think this is probably going to be welcome to a lot of people, and because we were kind of messing around with that little rookie wide receiver talk there. But Marvin Harrison Jr., I just think he's going to put it together in the second half. Josh Weinfuss of ESPN did a great article on him recently, just kind of looking into, how oh my goodness, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s work ethic has translated from college to the NFL. And the whole bigger part of the article is that he's an absolute practice workhorse, to the point where he's catching 1,200 passes a week from drug machines. Catches 200 6 days a week. 3 days before practice, he does 200. 3 days after, he does 200 on alternating days. And I think that, at some point, and I want to believe it's going to be in his rookie season, we've seen the greatness. We've seen his ceiling and we've seen his floor, right? That's out there. Some might equate that to being boom or bust. But, this goes way back to even the pre-draft scenario, where just the professionalism of how he went through this, the professionalism during practice, it just hasn't changed. To the point where Drew Terrell purposely pointed that out. That's the Cardinals wide receiver coach, for anyone curious. That was a big reason he pushed and continues to push Marvin in practice. And I just think at some point it's going to click. Kyler Murray, as much as he gets crapped on in the QB world, and Zach is probably somewhat laughing because he knows I, for some reason, stick up for Kyler Murray more than I ever should. But I do think he's a more than competent QB to support a wide receiver one in fantasy. And I do think that over the last half of the year, we will see Marvin Harrison emerge. Probably not to his ADP, because it was absolutely ridiculous when drafts closed out. But I do think you won't be as disappointed as you currently are.
Yeah, it's a really interesting schedule for him as well. He's got the Jets this coming week, so not particularly advantageous for that specific week. Although I think that people would be surprised to hear that Sauce Gardner has not been as good as he has been in previous years. So I'm not as positive as that. Like, I'm not saying Sauce Gardner isn't good. Don't hear what I'm not saying, but it may not be as poor of a matchup as in the past. That being said, he's got the bye week and then a really good stretch there for a bit. Seattle, Minnesota, oddly not the worst, despite the fact that their defense is pretty good. Seattle again, New England. While he may end up drawing Gonzalez in that game in week 15, which will be, playoffs at that point, I think I'd still be pretty comfortable starting him, and then Carolina and the Rams to finish out the fantasy playoffs for you there. So yeah, man, you've seen the big upside with him, as you mentioned, and you just have to imagine, like, why are we? I certainly have, anyways, lost confidence in him a little bit. But if he's half the guy that we expected him to be coming into the league, you have to assume that's coming back sooner rather than later.
100%.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Oh, every week I'm answering these start-sit questions on Sunday morning. I go to the weekly rankings on playerprofiler.com just to make sure that my instincts are correct, and sometimes they're not. And guess what? More often than not, I go with the projections. You may not feel great about starting Daniel Jones or Wan'Dale Robinson, but the projections say, hey, that's the move. It may not feel right, but you use those projections to get it right. That's the power of the Player Profiler system. It's Evan Ringler, it's Bradley Stalder, it's Theo Greminger, of course, it's Billy Muzio making these rankings possible. The season rankings, so you know who to pick up, who to trade for. The dynasty rankings are part of this. The offensive line rankings from Dan Fornick, one of the best in the business. Then we get our cornerback rankings, which show which corners are matched up with which wide receivers. And now, in collaboration with the IDP show, we have IDP rankings. Did you know that? Did you? So go to playerprofiler.com. Use promo code PODFATHER. Get you 25% off the player rankings package right now at playerprofiler.com. Enjoy!
All right, let's move along into the second half of the second half saviors. Who you got next?
That's a great question.
I think his
Sam
name's
Darnold.
There you go.
No, Sam Darnold's an interesting one to me because he obviously started the year very hot. I'm sure some people picked him up, and I'd imagine some people are still using him as their starter. But he still carries the name Sam Darnold. So, if you don't have a great QB situation, or you're streaming QBs and you need to find one to take a chance on, obviously long term, if there's dynasty listeners out here, it's a little bit more bleak. But if you need to hold down the fort for a little bit, this guy's been solid. I mean, he's projected to be the QB 13 rest of the season, ahead of guys like Tua, Stafford, Mayfield. And he just got Hawkinson back. So he did all this with, obviously without him. No offense to, Johnny Munt or et al. Or any of those guys. But I think
Munt caught a touchdown, didn't he, earlier this year? So that's something.
Hey, listen. He always says he's always like plus 1,000 to catch a touchdown, and the guy gets one in a random week every year that the main tight end is injured. So props to Johnny Munt. Anyways, he gets Hawkinson back, so now you have this setup of Hawkinson, Addison, and Justin Jefferson. That you can do far worse. Even the supporting cast behind them is solid with Naylor and Powell. Like, that is a good, strong fantasy foundation for a quarterback who's already performing pretty well. You're also getting, a little bit of rushing yards here and there out of him. He is slightly more athletic than people realize. It's funny. I feel like this offseason we're banging the drum of, or I was at least, that, JJ McCarthy has this secret athleticism that no one wants to talk about, but I think will come full circle and, when he gets to the NFL. And Sam Darnold has some athleticism to him. He utilizes that. He's able to move around the pocket. I think you can do far worse rest of the season if you have to, start Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to hate on him a little bit through those last, not against Indy, but the New Jersey, Detroit Rams stretch there on either side of the bye week, just because, he was not as good as he had been previously, quarterback 27, 13, 16, but then against Indy, of course, he was quarterback 9, and to that mobility, and if you don't know the play, or if you haven't seen the play, go back and look at it. I think the the Vikings posted this on their Twitter, but they have a sideline view of the coaches while Darnold is doing that whole scramble to throw that out of the pocket pass on the right side of the end zone there to Jordan Addison last week. And they're just screaming like, throw it away. Like, and he gets out of the pocket, ends up throws that touchdown. That was pretty cool to see. So they're certainly excited about him. And it's been weird. If you want me to give you an opinion outside of this year as to what will happen to Sam Darnold, I don't have a freaking clue. But I do think, despite the shakiness, I think I agree with you. We'll have to see. He's got the Jags, Titans, Bears, Cardinals, Falcons, Bears again, and then the Seahawks and the Packers to round out the playoffs. So the Bears I don't love going into the week one of the playoffs there. But outside of that, I mean, I think that the schedule for the most part, especially against Jacksonville this coming week, and then the Cardinals and Falcons, that could be pretty advantageous to really help you through that. Let's move on to a wide receiver that, I don't know, probably only the deepest of Devy players knew coming into the year down in Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, you also bring up a good point in the deepest of Devy players, right? Like, that's something that I think, and this is completely side note of Jalen Coker, who we're about to talk about. But, I think, through talking over the last few weeks, that me and Zach decided that we have to be better about bringing you guys these kind of names and going out there and finding them and working with the beat writers and working with the draft analysts. So that's something we're definitely going to start, taking it, what's the word I'm looking for? Start doing
Next
more
level,
of,
leveling
right?
it up.
Next, we're leveling up. Yes. I'm like Super Mario with my mushroom. And that's something that we are going to start to see more of and bring you guys more of, and basically expand our reach in the beat writer community to get that info for you all, so that then we can get ahead of these things and find guys like Jalen Coker, who should have never gone undrafted. And the fact that he did with his route running ability and his 50-50 ball ability is in, hindsight's always 20/20, right? Maybe it's 50-50 in this case. But the guy just seems to be able to play. Yeah, he's had some down games since emerging, or whatever you want to call it. But someone has to step up in Carolina. The depth chart's gross. And why not give a young, good route runner the opportunity to be on the field, which he is getting? It's going to be interesting. I really do expect him and Jatavian Sanders to be probably 1A and 1B in that scenario. I want to level again. We haven't seen a single thing from him. At least that I've been like, wow, that was impressive. Right. And correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you have.
Yeah, I mean, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. Leggett does, but yeah, none of them. He's crossed into a wide receiver. Not even one. His biggest game is wide receiver 13, and that was on 10 targets, 6 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown. Now, some of that, of course, is the fact that their team is not great. But yeah, when you look at Coker, he, over the past couple of weeks, he's drawn 6 targets against Denver in week 8, 3 targets only last week. But with those 6 targets he against Denver, I mean, 4 for 78 in a score, there's no reason to expect why he couldn't do just as well as Leggett based on the little bit of sample that we've seen so far from both of them on a not super great team.
And that's the thing. I mean, we're talking about a guy who people probably don't even know he's done that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say he's free, but he's the closest thing in most formats to free that have actually shown something. So cool name to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah, he's 14% rostered. Again, looking forward here. Got the Giants, who have a pretty underrated pass rush. Well, at least depending on what team you're a fan of here. The Giant and how closely you pay attention to football. But the Giants, I did pick up for my fantasy defense this week. So if they're still floating out there somewhere, definitely pick them up. Playing Carolina, never a bad decision to play whoever's playing Carolina. So who knows what we'll see from him this week. But then they go into the bye, and then coming out of that, we could really see maybe a shift. Perhaps we get Andy Dalton back, and that could open up the offense a little bit more. We'll have to see. But let's move on to my guy real quick, and then we'll get into some other notes on some other things. I wanted to select Bo Nix, and the reason that I did is because he's a top 8 to 10 quarterback, depending on the league format that you have. He has not had his bye week, so you can take that into account a little bit in those numbers, but he has done nothing but be super good a lot of the time, and he's only rostered in like 44% of sleeper leagues. This is a guy that you absolutely can start. You can even start him a little bit based on the matchup if you'd like, but it's crazy that a guy who's number 8 at quarterback is only 44% rostered. This is somebody who needs to be on your team, and he needs to be in your starting lineup fairly regularly here. He's got Kansas City this week, so it seems like several of these guys we're talking about face Kansas City, so not sure I love that. But after that, Atlanta, Vegas, Cleveland, bye week, Indy, the Chargers, who are relatively good on defense, but then Cincinnati if you're in the championship. So he's 44% rostered. If you can pick him up and be your second guy that you can start after this week for 3 games in a row, have a bye week, and then play Indy in that first week of the playoffs, I really, really think that sets up really, really well. And I've completely shifted my opinion on him. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's Sean Payton. I don't know that I care. But I like Bo Nix moving forward, and I never thought that I would say that, and it's everything within me to fight to say that, but that's what I'm saying here going forward.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks. See, I can grow. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, let's take a look at a couple of teams coming off of the bye here. For those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, you know that we like to just do that when we get a chance. Sometimes there's some big news that matters, and sometimes there's not. But a lot of times, teams coming out of their bye week can make some changes and some shifts. So we always like to talk about those guys before we move into the week that they come back from their bye. There's only 2 teams that were coming off of the bye this week. That would be the Steelers and the 49ers. And we'll just move through these quickly and then get to some injury updates and get you guys out of here. The Steelers, really, in my opinion, and Matt, you can correct me here if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot. A lot of the things that I like to look at are rookies that maybe have a chance at a larger opportunity. And the only real rookie of note, at least on the offensive side of the ball for the Steelers, would be Roman Wilson, who, man, what a disappointment he's been. I was really excited about him coming into the league here. But he's on IR again. And so, his season's basically shot, pretty much over. Mike Williams is really the only thing to talk about here. I talked about him on the last show, but one thing that he was interviewed by Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, and Mike Williams had this to say on like his time with Aaron Rodgers in New York. He said, quote, "It was cool going there after the ACL, not having OTAs or training camp to get the chemistry right. He was real detailed. He likes what he likes. Me not being able to get to transition in as quick is probably what went wrong." So for me, the fit there and seeing if Russell Wilson, which is wild to say, can be less eccentric and like detail oriented and I don't know, cranky when it comes to quarterbacking and throwing him the ball there. I don't know. There's not a whole heck of a lot. You got the running back situation with Najee and Jalen Warren, but did you have any takeaways for the Steelers?
No, I mean, that was, that's really the biggest part of what happened. I wish there was more. The running back situation, I think, is still has been a surprise for most people. After Najee not getting his fifth year picked up, after seeing the year after year of him dropping in production, and then maybe just needed a little motivation, and then people then look at the Jaylen Warren side of it and say, well, where'd all the why was everyone excited about this guy?
Yeah.
And I think the answer there is that everyone saw Najee progressively getting worse statistically. So, and Jaylen Warren getting better statistically, but clearly there's something going on this year where that's turned a bit, and Warren hasn't been able to stay on the field. So, at least to start the year, and Najee grabbed the bull by the horns and no pun intended, ran with it. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing there from the rushing side of things. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I don't really anticipate that changing. I'll be honest with you, when people bring Jaylen Warren up, it doesn't really rustle my jimmies, as it were. I don't understand why people get so excited about that guy. I understand he was PPR running back. Was it 22 last year or something?
It was something legitimate.
Yeah. So I get that, but I just don't think he has anywhere near the upside, and I don't anticipate that situation to change too much coming out of the bye week. So for the Steelers, other than Mike Wilson and what we've Mike Williams and what we've discussed with him over the last little bit here, I don't really anticipate too much of a change in general. That being said, the 49ers, there could be some pretty massive changes here. I'm curious to see your thoughts. We've got Christian McCaffrey coming back, and Shanahan had some notes, head coach Kyle Shanahan, that were not super helpful. We have not gotten a real bead on what Christian McCaffrey's workload is going to be. We've been told that he should be playing, at least by the national insiders. I mean, we were told that before in week 1. So color me cautious here. I know that it's everybody wants to be excited. And if he plays, don't get me wrong, he's in my starting lineup if he plays and I have him on my team. But I just, I don't know. We'll have to see. Jordan Mason, of course, is basically going to be worthless if Christian McCaffrey's on the field, in the sense that I have no confidence in starting him. You got Debo with another week to heal up. He has not been super consistent or healthy for a lot of this season as well. But Ricky Pearsall, rookie first-round pick for them, has an extra week. That's a guy that maybe we'll see a little bit more out of. Do you have any thoughts on any of those guys?
I think the CMC scenario is interesting because you have two sides of it here. You have a team that is absolutely starved to get its playmakers healthy and back on the field. But then you have a team also that is another one misslip with any of those stars away from losing their playmaker probably for the remainder of the year, if not a significant chunk of time. I'm talking a re-injury essentially of the same injury. So it has to be that delicate balance of, I almost feel like you have to bring Christian McCaffrey back when he's 100%. I don't think you have a choice, even though you're dying for the playmakers. Jordan Mason has done fine. He's obviously for fantasy, he's been great, but from an NFL standpoint, he's been fine. He's not the one winning. He's not the one losing the 49ers games, So from a football standpoint, you're okay there. I think the wide receivers, Debo probably being the most important to get back and going is he's probably vital at this point. The 49ers have obviously not looked great, and I think the offense is a big part of that. But I do not expect CMC to be on the field until he's 100%. Again, speculation, obviously, in my opinion. But it goes to piggyback off of what you were saying of if CMC's playing, then Jordan Mason is not playing, essentially, at least in my fantasy lineup. He's going to dominate. In theory, he's fresh, right? So I'm right on board with you in your takes there.
Yeah, and I'm curious with the rookie wide receiver in Pearsall. I mean, they've got Juwan Jennings there as well, and I'm not really sure on Ricky Pearsall's role. I was going to try to reach out to David Lombardi, who covers them for. Oh, he just switched. Him and Tim Kawakami switched. This is going to bug me. The San Francisco. Oh man, I'm not remembering that off the top of my head. But David Lombardi covers them. The San Francisco Standard, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So check them out. But I was gonna try to get his opinion on some things here, and maybe if I get a chance, check our Twitter, and I'll get a voicemail from him or something throughout the week. But I wanted to ask him specifically about Christian McCaffrey because he I think would kind of disagree with us a little bit in that he believes that this offense, whether or not it should be, a running back that's able to carry it, has not been as successful as they should be without Christian McCaffrey, and that like Jordan Mason kind of hasn't been able to cut it in certain critical moments despite his level of production. So I was interested to get his opinion on that because he had some pretty strong words on that. And so maybe if we get a chance, we'll do that. He kind of feels like they need Christian McCaffrey, despite the fact that they're back, at like sixth as far as points scored in the league. But I don't want to put any words in his mouth, so I'll go back and maybe find that and try to get him to explain that specifically. But getting him back, obviously a pretty critical thing here for the 49ers, and maybe a bigger bit, like a bigger thing than perhaps I would have at least put on them in the past. They are third, after all, in the division at the moment, behind the Rams and the Cardinals, which I didn't think I would be saying in the last, decade here. So let's move on to the injury side of things here, and we'll kind of wrap things up. Got a lot of players coming off of injury, a couple of really key ones. And the first one, Matt, is Nico Collins.
I mean, I'm pretty sure most of us watch Thursday Night Football. I think Houston obviously wins that game if Nico Collins is on the field. The loss of Diggs is clearly impactful. None of the other wide receivers seem to be fully in sync with Stroud, which was very apparent that night. Obviously, Tank Dell had a fine game, and that's going to happen because CJ Stroud is a good quarterback. But he is hindered, obviously, currently by his playmakers. So I think to get Nico Collins back, I think he instantly becomes a vacuum for targets. Probably, more so than when he was, before his injury, given what's transpired since then. He obviously probably also has, I would argue, the best connection with Stroud on that team. So when you put those two things together, if we're talking fantasy, that's fantasy gold. So I expect him to pick back up right where he left off, earn that big contract number that he has this year and the 3 in the future. And I'm just happy to see the guy back on the field.
Yeah, well, and that's the question, right? The reporting here, like just reading something from Aaron Wilson here, who covers the Texans, saying that Nico passed all tests for his hamstring. There were no setbacks per the sources that he had, his speed, mobility, all ready to go, and that it's a matter of when, not if, he'll be designated for return, but that the team is still determined, to figure out on activating him for the Lions game this week. And he did not practice today, from my understanding. Let me double check myself here. Yeah, not practicing. Now it is a Wednesday, so I'm not sure that matters because Wednesdays, especially for guys in this situation, I don't think we really care about. We're going to want to see that throughout the week here, particularly Friday, of course. So that will be the thing to keep a lookout on. But he's wide receiver 16 right now, and he hasn't played in 4 games. So that says something, right? That could be a big deal. And as you mentioned, the guys around him have not been great. We did see somebody else get activated today, Matt, and that was Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, which is awesome to see. And maybe we should have prerequisited this section with, these aren't guys that are coming back 100% this week. Actually, there's probably a good chance that none of them do. But it is guys to that have an outlook and will be coming off injury soon. So something to keep an eye on. But Jonathan Brooks, awesome to see him activated. I think it's smart to get him involved. I wouldn't be entirely shocked at all if he doesn't play until after the week 11 bye.
Do not speak that evil.
It was activate him today by 4 p.m. or lose him for the entire season. So if they have to activate him to hold him, and then just hold him out this week and then through the bye, then then he's playing in week 12. Now, obviously the crappy part about fantasy is, that's you're getting into crunch time there, and Chuba Hubbard hasn't been terrible. He's actually been quite good by most metrics, especially, for the Carolina Panthers. That being said, if Brooks is 100% healthy, he has to be on the field. He's your future. There's no reason that you don't want to start to get him comfortable in the scheme of your offense and the flow of it and get him touches. He's got to knock off a lot of rust. And practice helps, but we've seen it so many times where practice is practice and a game is a game. I remember like in training camp, we were laughing because I can't remember who the heck it was, but he's like, they were a wide receiver 1 because there were no pads on. You remember that?
Yeah.
And I can't for the life of me remember who it was. However,
I think it was Xavier Leggett.
Yeah, it could have been.
I think so. I could be wrong.
But I think this is a situation where I think everyone in Carolina, fans, ownership, coaches need to know what's here. They obviously spent a second round pick on him. I expect him when healthy, fully healthy, to be an active part of this team.
Yeah, I mean the thing you mentioned about Chuba Hubbard, yards per attempt right now, 5. That is wild on a team that
awesome.
Sucks. All right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's weird to think. Obviously, it doesn't work like this, but that you could hand the ball off to Chuba Hubbard every play and have a first down every 2. I don't know. That doesn't even sound right to me right now. Something isn't. I don't know. But in some ways, that's actually really good news for you guys who are Jonathan Brooks owners. He should certainly be better than Chuba Hubbard. And if Chuba Hubbard's able to do that, then hey, Jonathan Brooks should be able to too. One of the things that Mike K mentioned, though, when we had him talk to us and leave a voicemail a couple weeks ago, is that, he kind of anticipates him floating into that Miles Sanders role maybe to start. And that's more of like a third down-ish, pass catching-ish type of role. And if we look here, targets, Chuba does have a couple more, but for the amount that they play and the percentage of time that they're on the field, Miles Sanders has 26 targets, 21 receptions. So if he does, I don't know if they put a rookie into a third down role in Germany against the Giants this week before the bye. That's the only thing that's touchy to me. But I said this on our Twitter. I just do not believe that they would activate him and not play him at all, especially after the way Dave Canales spoke about him. So I hope you're wrong with kind of what you floated out there, but I understand why that could be the case as well, because they've been super, super, super careful. And honestly, it's just been a bummer. Like the Christian McCaffrey's been by far the worst pick in fantasy, but next to that, we expected Jonathan Brooks. I think everybody expected Jonathan Brooks back way earlier than what we have seen him here. Looks like our buddy Matt may have lost audio, so I'm going to continue here through until he's back. Matt, you just holler back. You back? I can't hear you.
Oh,
now I can hear you.
You can?
No,
Wonderful.
All right. You're good. That wasn't very long. We'll cut that out in post, right, for the guys listening on the podcast, right? Unless I'm lazy. So if you're listening to this, I took the easy route tonight. Keaton Mitchell, running back for the Ravens, spectacular at times last year. What do we expect to see from him, and where is he at?
I mean, I think this is a guy who in lesser leagues, for lack of a better term, is probably just floating out there. I think he's going to be a vital. I think he's going to be a vital part of what the Ravens do for the rest of the season once he is activated. I think he easily gets ahead of Justice Hill. He's a better version of Justice Hill. I think we saw that a ton last year. Heck, I even remember, 2 years ago in training camp, there was one of the first, videos that the Ravens put out, or the Ravens beat put out, was him running a wheel route and catching a pass down the sideline for a touchdown. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we got to feature this guy. Like, we got to build him up so people know who he is. And, he got banged up at the end of camp or whatever, and then came on just all out. And, maybe now people are like, oh, he's the dreaded injury prone tag. But he is a better version of Justice Hill. He's a more electric version of Justice Hill. He's a more elusive version. He's a better pass catcher. So, that could be a huge part of what the Ravens do. Now, I'd be way more excited if, what's his name? Deontay Johnson didn't end up in Baltimore, but I still think there's some value to be had here.
Yeah, the pass catching element I think will be interesting to monitor, because if there's one thing that Derrick Henry cannot do, it is be a third down back and catch the ball. Obviously, he succeeds well enough at literally everything else for that not to matter whatsoever. But it does open up a potential role at times that, he could come in on third downs. And yeah, he's certainly super explosive. He's not super big, which is, of course, like, he's basically the direct opposite of Derrick Henry in a lot of ways.
He is.
5'8", 191, and, they tend to boost those numbers. So could be a little bit shorter, could be a little bit lighter, but definitely not short on speed. So I'm interested to see if he'll play this Thursday. And if you're watching this on the Player Profiler stream, you'll already know the result here. So excited to see what we get there. Other injuries of note: Isaiah Likely out this week for the Thursday game. T. Higgins is doubtful. You can consider him a scratch as well. Those two guys in the Thursday game, that is, I believe I heard, the highest over-under total that we've had so far in the year between the Bengals and the Ravens. So because it's on Thursday Night Football, we'll probably get 30 points between both teams. But in all seriousness, but in all seriousness, I'm super excited about that game, and I want basically anybody who's healthy, who is a reasonable starter. You mentioned Deontay Johnson, though. Are you confident in playing him in any capacity? I personally am not. That's where I would probably draw the line.
No.
All right.
I haven't done my rankings this week, so yeah. I haven't dove into too much. Probably going to do the initial ones tomorrow morning. If, again, this was, Wednesday night? We're probably release this later. But probably get those up Thursday morning. At least the initial ones. And I am curious after doing a bit more research of where I'm going to land with him. But my gut tells me that I'm not excited about it.
Yeah. What about Jermaine Burton? You excited about that?
I mean, there's a chance that I end up at the casino tomorrow night. And he also seems to be a goer of the casino. The only thing is I'm not going after disciplinary reasons and not being activated for an NFL game.
So wait a second. Did he go to the casino after being disciplined and not active for that game? Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's what I think the word on the street was. Yeah. Now you got me second guessing my Twitter sources.
I mean, I'll take it either way. Somebody showed up in pajamas and was late. That's just, these are the type of guys I just, again, you don't want to judge people. I think when we had this conversation with Ben Baby last summer, this past summer, one of the things I wanted to emphasize, I was actually talking with Alex. for the Vikings, the Athletic.
Alec Lewis.
Yes, yeah, great guy, by the way. Does a great job for them as well. But about Jordan Addison, like, I want to be careful to judge people, but
I remember
Jermaine Burton, man, at this point, it seems to be he's showing us exactly why he fell in the draft. And that's just, I don't know why you'd be given this opportunity and just throw it away. T. Higgins is out and you go and you do this. I don't want to pick on him too much, but like, man, this does not bode well at all for his future. And I don't know if the Bengals can't trust him, you certainly can't. I don't think you can probably sell him in a dynasty league if that's what you're interested in doing. But he's the type of guy, as soon as he shows anything personally, he gone off my roster for whatever I can get personally.
So just to add to the lore of this story, so he also had the same sweatshirt on as when he got deactivated on Sunday when the picture was taken overnight on Monday. So he didn't bother to change either, given his long day at not work, I guess.
Good grief. Man, he's going to be out of the league. Who was that tackle
100%.
for the Titans a couple years back who was a first-round pick and gone the next year? Who was that?
Yeah.
I forget.
That was me too.
Yeah, that was wild. You hate to see it and just throwing all of that away.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to some more injuries of note. Monitor this throughout the week, particularly Friday. Devonta Smith, hamstring, did not practice today. On Wednesday, Dak Prescott. What's interesting to note here, you already knew that he was potentially going to go on the IR. They're trying to get a second opinion, but the reality of this is that he could be gone for longer based on the type of injury that he has. Man, this could mean, again, if the Cowboys knew anything about this, I criticized them already for the Jonathan Mingo trade on the last show. But my goodness, like, what are you doing? If he's going to be out 6+ games, just throw the season away. I know that sucks. You got a bunch of guys in the locker room. That's hard to do. But Jerry, just give up on it. It's over. It's done. Put him on, So, anyways, I know guys want to play, so Dak is going to do everything he wants to get back. But their season is busted. It's over, and we can all move on. So next year, obviously, I don't think that should be an issue. But I do wonder if that caps some upside for CeeDee Lamb, not just for the next 4 weeks, but for the rest of the season, if Dak Prescott, of course, is not there. We then see Chris Olave with the concussion stuff coming out there from Catherine Terrell, who we retweeted. They're basically giving him the Tua treatment from what I can see, telling him to spend time with his family. Yeah, what do you think about that?
No, I mean, it's his 4th concussion now. That's wild. Like, opinions are obviously thrown around with these scenarios. You hear, these guys make millions of dollars. Like, if they get injured, that's part of the risk, blah, blah, blah. I mean, but we're still all human at the end of the day. I don't agree with Tua being back on the field. The guy's won, like, if there was I can't remember the name of the movie. It was a really stupid, like, teen movie that came out in, like, 2000. And they had, like, a
which
like
one? There's probably 1,000.
It was a spoof of, like, Varsity Blues, and they had like a Billy Bob on there, and every time he would get concussed, they'd, like, change the number on the scoreboard to, like, and, like, it's funny, like, you laugh at it, but then you see it in real life. Like, I remember Wes Welker going through it, and I'm like, this guy has got to get off the field. And, I'm sure Olave is obviously super young. I'm sure he's, not thinking long term. And at the end of the day, the NFL is a business. It is willing to risk within reasonable scenarios, and reasonable is a loose definition. The NFLPA clearly doesn't seem to care at all. So it's, I'm sure he'll be back on the field when he clears, and like Tua, we'll just be holding our breath every day.
All right, well, we'll have to see what happens there. Before we leave, do you have any last minute notes for us, Matt?
No.
All right.
Get everything I have.
We'll let everybody get out of here. Everybody make sure to check us out at 32beatwriters.com. We are working again on those website improvements. So I don't know, maybe give us a month if you haven't checked us out, and check us out then. Sign up using the code podcast for 50% off of your first month of membership. For Matt Olson and the rest of the 32 Beat Writers team, I'm Zach Hyduk, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Beat with Zach Hyduk and Matt Olson. For more expert analysis and exclusive insights from the best in the game, don't forget to subscribe and stay ahead of the competition. Until next time, keep turning that insider knowledge into fantasy football wins.